Oh, hi. I didn't see you come in. How's it going? Not showing too many people. Oh, looks like Sharkies are here, Farmhouse is here, and someone called Droop Dog with a lot of G's on there. Hope my sound's coming through. Hey, Sharkies. Hello. Yeah, someone mentioned to me, if you were wondering why I've been streaming for like 5 minutes but hadn't actually been on, it's someone mentioned to me that sometimes it takes a little while for Twitch to send out the streaming notification, so they suggested starting the stream a little earlier. No, no, I just had the lens cover on. I just wasn't starting yet. But it's Wednesday, the 20th. It's our friend Robot Kyo's birthday tomorrow. I don't know if he's going to show up or not. Ereker, once again, is not going to make it today, but she said she'll be here on Friday. So we'll see about that. Here for another exciting foray into Guards by Sir Terry Pratchett. Yeah, hopefully my sound's okay. I hope you guys can't hear my 3D printer running in the background. I've got a print going now, getting ready for the upcoming D&D game I'm going to be running, so I'm printing off some tiles for that. So hopefully that doesn't come through on the microphone too much. If you're wondering what that kind of like sound is. Sounds good? Okay. Yeah, I've been busy printing away. I suppose I could grab something that I've been working on and show you what it looks like. Give me one moment, I'll be right back. All right, Farmhouse. Very minor spoiler warning. Very, very minor. Slight robot noises. All right. So this is just a little something that I've been putting together. You can see it's divided into 1-inch spaces, so there's kind of a grid built in for characters to for models to stand on. Um, and it'll be a lot more complicated than this once it's actually, closer to a finished state. But this is just unpainted mostly. A few of the floor tiles have been, primed brown, but the walls haven't been yet. Yeah, there's walls and a floor. I don't think I've got a mini standing anywhere nearby, unfortunately, but yeah. So it's there's more to it than this, but this is just a piece of what I've been working on. And it all kind of comes apart like it's held together with these clips. So it's modular. You can disassemble and reassemble into all kinds of different shapes and whatnot, and the floors are the same way. You can see the actual gaps where they're held together in there, and they're held together with the same clips. So it all just kind of, you print a pile of those clips off, and then you just, you know, print the pieces that you're going to need, and then when you're done with them, you can reuse them because you can clip them together in different shapes. So it's kind of like Lego for D&D. It's a fun system. Um, this will be the first game that I actually have the opportunity to use it in. I'd printed off a whole dungeon for a different game I was going to run, but then that game fell apart because one of the players kind of temporarily moved to Alberta for work. So before the game started, so we didn't get the chance to actually run that, unfortunately. Yeah, an airbrushing day would be good. It would be nice if it looked a little more like, big deal if it doesn't look painted up when we use it. But if it was painted up, I feel like the effect would be a little nicer. I don't know exactly what kind of finished state it's going to get to by the 31st when we run our first full game. But yeah, so that's kind of what I've been doing with the printing project. Um, what have the Sharkies been up to? Anything fun since we last spoke on Friday-ish? Another name I don't recognize, Syndica. Well, hello. We spent the weekend out in Chilliwack with our pup and visiting some friends, visiting Ericer. He played D&D on Sunday. Cool. Very close to the end of a long campaign. Well, that's exciting. I think you've mentioned that once or twice. What level are you guys at? Because I feel like I have a vague recollection, but I'm really just kind of guessing, so it's a lot easier just to ask what level everybody's at. Is it going to be an exciting, world-shaking conclusion? Level 9? 9's a good level. I like the range of like 6 or 7 to like 12, I think is pretty fun. Before that, the characters started at level 2. For some reason, you used 3s instead of E's. Level 2. 2 to 9 is a good run. We're going to be starting this next game at level 1, which is risky. It's easy for, especially because I think we've got a few squishier characters. It's going to be 4 players, starting with a warlock, a bard, a druid, and a cleric. So it's a very casty party. The cleric is probably going to be the most, tanky character out of the bunch. Although druids can be a little tanky. You got to kill off the character's personal nemesis. That's exciting. So yeah, especially I would say the bard and the warlock. At level 1, you can't necessarily take too many hits. I had one game where we started off. We were running the module of the Lost Mines of Phandelver, which is a fantastic, classic D&D module for 5th edition. Very I don't know, very Dungeons and Dragons vibes. But yeah, they started off, they're riding on a wagon, and they get attacked by goblins, and I think one of the goblins had a crossbow, and the first attack of the round shoots the crossbow at the wizard who was driving the wagon, and bam, one shot. He's pinned to the wagon with a crossbow bolt and making death saves, which he managed to get, like, passed his death saves and then got healed up at some point. But that was just a single crossbow bolt. I think it was a critical hit. It was just a rough start to the game. When that in the fall I killed mine enemy. Oh boy. I guess that's the 1337 speak. So yeah, what happened the last time we read this book? There was a lot of Lady, it's Ramkin, right? Yeah, Lady Ramkin. The dragon was flying around over top of Ankh-Morpork and lighting very specific places, such as a certain fancy carriage and a vegetable stall on fire. Which Vimes witnessed, along with Lady Ramkin. And then I think Vimes went and had a drink, or several. When you drink a whole bottle, is that considered several drinks if you're drinking right out of the bottle, or is that just one drink? And we had just had another bit of the elucidated brethren. Brother Dunnikin had been bitten by an alligator or a crocodile or something, and the Supreme Grandmaster was having some... No, he said, I can give it up, he thought. I can give it up any time I like, in reference to summoning the dragon. So, that's a little sketchy there. Yeah. Also, Vimes gathered from hearing Nobby talk that there might be a little bit of a gold rush in Ankh-Morpork, with people searching for the dragon, because, as everybody knows, dragons like to sleep on treasure, and Ankh-Morporkians tend to be somewhat opportunistic. I say somewhat, but I'm not sure there is a more opportunistic city in fantasy literature. Not one I can think of anyways. In the Belgariad, there's a nation of people that enjoy money and run roads with taxes and things like that. But I still wouldn't call them as opportunistic necessarily as Ankh-Morporkians. Alright, well, we're getting close to 7:15, so why don't we get started? We are on page 144 out of approximately 412 pages. The streets outside the patrician's palace were thronged. There was a manic air of carnival. Vimes ran a practiced eye over the assortment before him. It was the usual Ankh-Morpork mob in times of crisis. Half of them were here to complain, a quarter of them were here to watch the other half, and the remainder were here to rob, importune, or sell hot dogs to the rest. There were a few new faces, though. There were a number of grim men with big swords slung over their shoulders and whips slung on their belts, striding through the crowds. "News spreads quick, don't it?" observed a familiar voice by his ear. "Morning, Captain." Vimes looked into the grinning, cadaverous face of cut-me-own-throat Dibbler, purveyor of absolutely anything that could be sold hurriedly from an open suitcase in a busy street, and was guaranteed to have fallen off the back of an ox cart. "Morning, Throat," said Vimes absently. "What are you selling?"
"Genuine article, Captain."
Throat leaned closer. He was the sort of person who could make "good morning" sound like a once-in-a-lifetime, never-to-be-repeated offer. His eyes swiveled back and forth in their sockets, like two rodents trying to find a way out.
"Can't afford to be without it,"
he hissed.
"Anti-dragon cream. Personal guarantee. If you're incinerated, you get your money back. No quibble."
"What you're saying," said Vimes slowly, "if I understand the wording correctly, is that if I am baked alive by the dragon, you'll return the money."
"Upon personal application,"
said Cut-Me-Own-Throat. He unscrewed the lid from a jar of vivid green ointment and thrust it under Vimes's nose.
"Made from over 50 different rare spices and herbs to a recipe known only to a bunch of ancient monks what live on some mountain somewhere. $1 a jar, and I'm cutting me own throat. It's a public service, really," he added piously.
"You've got to hand it to those ancient monks, brewing it up so quickly," said Vimes.
"Clever buggers,"
agreed Cut-Me-Own-Throat.
"It must be all that meditation and yak yogurt."
"So, what's happening, Throat?" said Vimes. "Who are all the guys with the big swords?"
"Dragon hunters, Cap'n. The patrician announced a reward of $50,000 to anyone who brings him the dragon's head. Not attached to the dragon either. He's no fool, that man."
"What?"
"That's what he said. It's all written on posters."
$50,000?
Not chicken feed, eh?
"More like dragon fodder," said Vimes. "It'd bring trouble, you mark his words. I'm amazed you're not grabbing a sword and joining in."
"I'm more in what you might call the service sector, Captain."
Throat looked both ways conspiratorially, and then passed Vimes a slip of parchment. It said, "Anti-dragon mirror shields, A, $500. I guess Ank. Portable lair detectors, A, $250. Dragon-piercing arrows, A, $100 per each. Shovels, A, $5. Picks, A, $5. Sacks, A, $1. Vimes handed it back. "Why the sacks?" he said.
"On account of the horde,"
said Throat. "Oh yes," said Vimes gloomily. "Of course."
"Tell you what," said Throat. "Tell you what. For our boys in brown, 10% off."
"And you're cutting your own throat, Throat?"
15% for officers,"
urged Throat, as Vimes walked away. The cause of the slight panic in his voice was soon apparent. He had plenty of competition. The people of Ankh-Morpork were not by nature heroic, but were by nature salesmen. In the space of a few feet, Vimes could have bought any number of magical weapons, genuine certificate of authenticity with every one, a cloak of invisibility, a good touch, he thought, and he was really impressed by the way the stall owner was using a mirror with no glass in it, and, by way of lighter relief, dragon biscuits, balloons, and windmills on sticks. Copper bracelets, guaranteed to bring relief from dragons, were a nice thought. There seemed to be as many sacks and shovels about as there were swords. Gold, that was it. The hoard. Ha! $50,000. An officer of the watch earned $30 a month and had to pay to have his own dents beaten out. What he couldn't do with $50,000. Vimes thought about this for a while, and then thought of the things he could do with $50,000. There were so many more of them for a start. He almost walked into a group of men clustered around a poster nailed to the wall. It declared, indeed, that the head of the dragon that had terrorized the city would be worth $50,000 to the brave hero that delivered it to the palace. One of the cluster, who, from his size, weaponry, and the way he was slowly tracing the lettering with his finger, Vimes decided was a leading hero, was doing the reading for the others. "To Terher Palaki," he concluded. 50,000, said one of them reflectively, rubbing his chin. "Cheap job," said the intellectual. "Well below the rate. Should be half the kingdom and his daughter's hand in marriage." "Yes, but he ain't a king. He's a patrician." "Well, half his patrimony or whatever. What's his daughter like?" The assembled hunters didn't know. "He's not married," Vimes volunteered, "and he hasn't got a daughter." They turned and looked him up and down. He could see the disdain in their eyes. They probably got through dozens like him every day. "Not got a daughter," said one of them. "Wants people to kill dragons, and he hasn't got a daughter." Vimes felt, in an odd way, that he ought to support the lord of the city. "He's got a little dog that he's very fond of," he said helpfully. "Bleeding disgusting, not even having a daughter," said one of the hunters. "And what's $50,000 these days? You spend that much in nets." "'S right," said another. "People think it's a fortune, but they don't reckon on, well, it's not pensionable. There's all the medical expenses, you gotta buy and maintain your own gear. Wear and tear on virgins," nodded a small fat hunter. "Yeah, and then there's—" "What?" My specialty is unicorns," the hunter explained with an embarrassed smile. "Oh, right." The first speaker looked like someone who'd always been dying to ask the question. "I thought they were very rare these days." "You're right there. You don't see many unicorns either," said the unicorn hunter. Vimes got the impression that, in his whole life, this was his only joke. I should have emphasized that a little differently, I think. Farmouse had forgotten about Veterinary's dog. Sharky's "I'm rather fond of dogs" Monty Python record sketch. Farmouse Waffles, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. Alright, so. "I thought they were very rare these days." "You're right there. You don't see many unicorns either," said the unicorn hunter. There we go. Vimes got the impression that, in his whole life, this was his only joke. "Yeah, well, times are hard," said the first speaker sharply. "Monsters are getting more uppity too," said another. "I heard where this guy, he killed this monster in this lake, no problem, stuck its arm up over the door." "Por encorge les ortras," said one of the listeners. Am I missing something there? "Right, and you know what? Its mum come and complained. Its actual mum come right down to the hall the next day and complained. Actually complained. That's the respect you get." "The females are always the worst," said another hunter gloomily. "I knew this cross-eyed Gorgon once. Oh, she was a terror. Kept turning her own nose to stone." "It's our arses on the line every time," said the intellectual. "I mean, I wish I had $1 for every horse I've had eaten out from underneath me." "Right. $50,000. He can stuff it." "Yeah. Right. Cheapskate. Let's go and have a drink." "Right." They nodded in righteous agreement and strode off towards the mended drum, except for the intellectual, who sidled uneasily back to Vimes. "What sort of dog?" he said. "What?" said Vimes. "I said, what sort of dog?" "A small, wire-haired terrier, I think," said Vimes. The hunter thought about this for some time. "Nah," he said eventually, and hurried off after the others. "He's got an aunt in Pseudopolis, I believe," Vimes called after him. There was no response. The captain of the watch shrugged and carried on through the throng to the patrician's palace, where the patrician was having a difficult lunchtime. "Gentlemen," he snapped, "I really don't see what else there is to do." The assembled civic leaders muttered amongst themselves. "At times like this, it's traditional that a hero comes forth." Oh, I mixed up the voice there. Although it could be similar, this is, said the president of the Guild of Assassins. A dragon slayer. Where is he? That's what I want to know. Why aren't our schools turning out young people with the kind of skills society needs? $50,000 doesn't sound much, said the chairman of the Thieves' Guild. Oh boy, I'm missing some stuff. Pharma says a joke worthy of a womp womp to encourage the others. Also, Beowulf reference. Sharky say that Monty Python sketch actually called World War Noises. First World War Noises. Okay, I don't remember that one specifically. Though I think I... Is it a flying circus sketch? It may not be much to you, my dear sir, but it is all the city can afford, said the patrician firmly. It doesn't afford any more than that. If it doesn't afford any more than that, I don't think there'll be a city for long, said the thief. And what about trade? Said the representative of the Guild of Merchants. People aren't going to sail here with the cargo of rare comestibles just to have it incinerated, are they? Gentlemen, gentlemen, the patrician raised his hands in a conciliatory fashion. It seems to me, he went on, taking advantage of the brief pause, that what we have here is a strictly magical phenomenon. I would like to hear from our learned friend on this point. Someone nudged the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University, who had nodded off. Eh? What? Said the wizard, startled into wakefulness. We were wondering, said the patrician loudly, what you were intending to do about this dragon of yours. The Arch-Chancellor was old, but a lifetime of survival in the world of competitive wizardry and the Byzantine politics of Unseen University meant that he could whip up a defensive argument in a split second. You didn't remain Arch-Chancellor for long if you let that sort of ingenuous remark whiz past your ear. My dragon, he said. It's well known that the great dragons are extinct, said the patrician brusquely. And besides, their natural habitat was definitely rural. So it seems to me that this one must be With respect, Lord Vetinari, said the Arch-Chancellor, it has often been claimed that dragons are extinct, but the current evidence, if I may make so bold, tends to cast a certain doubt on the theory. As to habitat, what we are seeing here is simply a change of behavior pattern, occasioned by the spread of urban areas into the countryside, which has led many hitherto rural creatures to adopt, nay, in many cases to positively embrace, a more municipal mode of existence, and many of them thrive on the new opportunities thereby open to them. For example, foxes are always knocking over my dustbins. He beamed. He'd managed to get all the way through it without actually needing to engage his brain. Are you saying, said the assassin slowly, that what we've got here is the first civic dragon? That's evolution for you, said the wizard, happily. It should do well, too, he added. Plenty of nesting sites and a more than adequate food supply. Silence greeted this statement, until the merchant said,
What exactly is it that they do eat? The thief shrugged. I seem to recall stories about virgins chained to huge rocks, he volunteered. It'll starve around here, then, said the assassin. We're on loam. They used to go around ravening, said the thief. Don't know if that'll help, if that's any help. Anyway, said the leader of the merchants, it seems to be your problem again, my lord.
5 minutes later, the patrician was striding the length of the oblong office, fuming.
They were laughing at me, said the patrician. I could tell. Did you suggest a working party? Said Once. Of course I did. It didn't do the trick this time. You know, I really am inclined to increase the reward money. I don't think that would work, my lord. Any proficient monster slayer knows the rate for the job. Ha! Half the kingdom, muttered the patrician. And your daughter's hand in marriage, said Once.
I suppose an aunt isn't acceptable, the patrician said hopefully.
Tradition demands a daughter, my lord.
The patrician nodded gloomily. Perhaps we can buy it off, he said aloud. Are dragons intelligent?
I believe the word traditionally is cunning, my lord, said Once. I understand they have a liking for gold.
Really? What do they spend it on?
They sleep on it, my lord.
What? Do you mean in a mattress?
No, my lord, on it.
The patrician turned this fact over in his mind. Don't they find it rather knobbly? He said.
So I would imagine, sir. I don't suppose anyone has ever asked.
Can they talk?
They're apparently good at it, my lord.
Ah. Interesting. The patrician was thinking, if it can talk, it can negotiate. If it can negotiate, then I have it by the small scales, or whatever it is they have.
And they are said to be silver-tongued, said Once.
The patrician leaned back in his chair. Only silver? He said. There was the sound of muted voices in the passageway outside, and Vimes was ushered in. Ah, Captain, said the patrician. What progress?
I'm sorry, my lord, said Vimes as the rain dripped off his cape.
Towards apprehending this dragon, said the patrician firmly.
The wading bird, said Vimes.
You know very well what I mean, said Vetinari sharply.
Investigations are in hand, said Vimes automatically.
The patrician snorted. All you have to do is find its lair, he said. Once you have the lair, you have the dragon. That's obvious. Half the city seems to be looking for it. If there's a lair, said Vimes. Once looked up sharply. Why do you say that? We are considering a number of possibilities, said Vimes woodenly. If it has no lair, where does it spend its days? Said the patrician.
Enquiries are being pursued, said Vimes.
Then pursue them with alacrity, and find the lair, said the patrician sourly.
Yes, sir. Permission to leave, sir.
Very well, but I shall expect progress by tonight. Do you understand? Now, why did I wonder if it has a lair? Vimes thought, as he stepped out into the daylight and the crowded square. Because it didn't look real, that's why. If it isn't real, it doesn't need to do anything we expect. How can it walk out of an alley it didn't go into? Once you've ruled out the impossible, then whatever is left, however improbable, must be the truth. The problem lay in working out what was impossible, of course. That was the trick, all right. There was also the curious incident of the orangutan in the nighttime. I like that little Sherlock Holmes quote followed by a Sherlock Holmes title, sort of. The curious case of. Oh, the arm over the door and the mother coming to complain. That's Beowulf, alright. Album sketch from matching tie and handkerchief. Okay. Oh boy. I feel like my voice is a little tired tonight. Sorry if it affects things. By day, the library buzzed with activity. Vimes moved through it diffidently. Strictly speaking, he could go anywhere in the city, but the university had always held that it fell under thaumaturgical law, and he felt it wouldn't be wise to make the kind of enemies where you were lucky to end up the same temperature, let alone the same shape. He found the librarian hunched over his desk. The ape gave him an expectant look. "Haven't found it yet. Sorry," said Vimes. "Enquiries are continuing. But there is a little help you can give me." "Ook?" "Well, this is a magical library, right? I mean, these books are sort of intelligent. Isn't that so? So I've been thinking. I bet if I got in here at night, they'd soon kick up a fuss, because they don't know me. But if they did know me, they'd probably not mind. So whoever took the book would have to be a wizard, wouldn't they? Or someone who works for the university at any rate." The librarian glanced from side to side, then grasped Vimes's hand and led him into the seclusion of a couple of bookshelves. Only then did he nod his head. "Someone they know?" A shrug, then another nod. "That's why you told us, is it?" "Ook." "And not the University Council?" "Ook." "Any idea who it is?" The librarian shrugged, a decidedly expressive gesture for a body which was basically a sack between a pair of shoulder blades. "Well, it's something. Let me know if any other strange things happen, won't you?" Vimes looked up at the bank of shelves. "Stranger than usual, I mean." "Ook." "Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet a citizen who regards it as their duty to assist the watch." The librarian gave him a banana. Vimes felt curiously elated as he stepped out into the city's throbbing streets again. He was definitely detecting things. They were little bits of things, like a jigsaw. No one of them made any real sense, but they all hinted at a bigger picture. All he needed to do was find a corner, or a bit of an edge. He was pretty sure it wasn't a wizard, whatever the librarian might think. Not a proper, paid-up wizard. This sort of thing wasn't their style. And there was, of course, this business about the lair. The most sensible course would be to wait and see if the dragon turned up tonight, and try and see where. That meant a high place. Was there some way of detecting dragons themselves? He'd had a look at Cut-Me-Own-Throat Dibbler's dragon detectors, which consisted solely of a piece of wood on a metal stick. When the stick was burned through, you'd found your dragon. Like a lot of Cut-Me-Own-Throat's devices, it was completely efficient in its own special way, while at the same time being totally useless. There had to be a better way of finding the thing than waiting until your fingers were burned off. The setting sun spread out on the horizon like a lightly poached egg. The rooftops of Ankh-Morpork sprouted a fine array of gargoyles even in normal times, but now they were alive with as ghastly an array of faces as ever were seen outside a woodcut about the evils of gin drinking among the non-woodcut buying classes. Many of the faces were attached to bodies holding a fearsome array of homely weapons that had been handed down from generation to generation for centuries, often with some force. From his perch on the roof of the watch-house, Vimes could see the wizards lining the rooftops of the university, and the gangs of opportunist horde researchers waiting in the streets, shovels at the ready. If the dragon really did have a bed somewhere in the city, then it would be sleeping on the floor tomorrow. From somewhere below came the cry of Cut-Me-On-Throat Dibbler, or one of his colleagues, selling hot sausages. Vimes felt a sudden surge of civic pride. There had to be something right about a citizenry which, when faced with catastrophe, thought about selling sausages to the participants. The city waited. A few stars came out. Colin, Nobby, and Carrot were also on the roof. Colin was sulking because Vimes had forbidden him to use his bow and arrow. These weren't encouraged in the city, since the heft and throw of a longbow's arrow could send it through an innocent bystander 100 yards away, rather than the innocent bystander at whom it was aimed. "That's right," said Carrot. "The Projectile Weapons Civic Safety Act, 1634. "Don't you keep on quoting all that sort of stuff," snapped Colin. "We don't have any of them laws anymore. That's all old stuff. It's all more, what's name now? Pragmatic." "Law or no law," said Vimes, "I say put it away." "But, Captain, I was a dab hand at this," protested Colin. Puppy just ran past. "Anyway," he added peevishly, "a lot of other people have got them." That was true enough. Neighboring rooftops bristled like hedgehogs. If the wretched thing turned up, it was going to think it was flying through solid wood with slots in it. You could almost feel sorry for it. "I said, put it away," said Vimes. "I'm not having my guards shooting citizens. So put it away." "That's very true," said Carrot. "We're here to protect and to serve, aren't we, Captain?" Vimes gave him a sidelong look. He said. "Yeah. Yes. That's right." On the roof of her house on the hill, Lady Ramkin adjusted a rather inadequate folding chair on the roof, arranged the telescope, coffee flask and sandwiches on the parapet in front of her, and settled down to wait. She had a notebook on her knee. Half an hour went by. Hails of arrows greeted a passing cloud, several unfortunate bats, and the rising moon. "Bugger this for a game of soldiers," said Nobby eventually. "It's been scared off." Sergeant Colin lowered his pike. "Looks like it," he conceded. "And it's getting chilly up here," said Carrot. What are you doing? Okay. Random dinosaur hunting by Puppy. Alright. Pup zoomies, yeah, that's right. "And it's getting chilly up here," said Carrot. He politely nudged Captain Vimes. who was slumped against the chimney, staring moodily into space. "Maybe we ought to be getting down, sir," he said. "Lots of people are." Said Vimes, without moving his head. "Could be coming on to rain, too," said Carrot. Vimes said nothing. For some minutes he had been watching the Tower of Art, which was the center of Unseen University, and reputedly the oldest building in the city. It was certainly the tallest. Time, weather, and indifferent repairs had given it a gnarled appearance, like a tree that has seen too many thunderstorms. He was trying to remember its shape. As is the case with many things that are totally familiar, he hadn't really looked at it for years. Now he was trying to convince himself that the forest of little turrets and crenellations at its top looked just the same tonight as they had done yesterday. It was giving him some difficulty. Without taking his eyes off it, he grabbed Sergeant Colin's shoulder and gently pointed him in the right direction. He said, "Can you see anything odd about the top of the tower?" Colin stared up for a while, and then laughed nervously.
"Well, it looks like there's a dragon sitting on it, doesn't it?"
"Yes, that's what I thought."
Only when you sort of look properly, you can see it's just made up out of shadows and clumps of ivy and that. I mean, if you half close one eye, it looks like two old women and a wheelbarrow."
Vimes tried this. "Nope," he said. "It still looks like a dragon. A huge one. Sort of hunched up and looking down. Look, you can see its wings folded up."
"Beg pardon, sir. That's just a broken turret giving the effect."
They watched it for a while. Then Vimes said, "Tell me, Sergeant, I ask in the spirit of pure enquiry, what do you think's causing the effect of a pair of huge wings unfurling?" Colin swallowed.
"I think that's caused by a pair of huge wings, sir," he said.
"Spot on, Sergeant." The dragon dropped. It wasn't a swoop. It simply kicked away from the top of the tower, and half fell, half flew, straight downwards, disappearing from view behind the university buildings. Vimes caught himself listening for the thump. And then the dragon was in view again, moving like an arrow, moving like a shooting star, moving like something that has somehow turned a 32 feet per second plummet, it says per second twice here, into an unstoppable upward swoop. It glided over the rooftops at a little more than head height, all the more horrible because of the sound. It was as though the air was slowly and carefully being torn in half. The watch threw themselves flat. Vimes caught a glimpse of huge, vaguely horse-like features before it slid past.
"Sodding arseholes,"
said Nobby from somewhere in the guttering. Vimes redoubled his grip on the chimney and pulled himself upright. "You are in uniform, Corporal Nobbs," he said, his voice hardly shaking at all.
"Sorry, Captain. Sodding arseholes, sir."
"Where's Sergeant Colin?"
"Down here, sir. Holding on to this drain pipe, sir."
"Oh, for goodness sake. Help him up, Carrot."
"Gosh,"
said Carrot.
"look at it go."
You could tell the position of the dragon by the rattle of arrows across the city, and by the screams and gurgles of all those hit by the misses and ricochets.
"He hasn't even flapped his wings yet,"
shouted Carrot, trying to stand on the chimney pot.
"Look at him go!"
"It shouldn't be that big," Vimes told himself, watching the huge shape wheel over the river. "It's as long as a street." There was a puff of flame above the docks, and for a moment the creature passed in front of the moon. Then it flapped its wings, once, with a sound like the damp hides of a pedigree herd being slapped across a cliff. Arma says wing effects caused by wings. It turned in a tight circle, pounded the air a few times to build up speed, and came back. When it passed over the watch house, it coughed a column of spitting white fire. Tiles under it didn't just melt, they erupted in red-hot droplets. The chimney stack exploded and rained bricks across the street. Vast wings hammered at the air as the creature hovered over the burning building, fire spearing down on what rapidly became a glowing heap. Then, when all that was left was a spreading puddle of melted rock with interesting streaks and bubbles in it, the dragon raised itself with a contemptuous flick of its wings and soared away and upwards over the city. Lady Rampkin lowered her telescope and shook her head slowly. "That's not right," she whispered. "That's not right at all. Shouldn't be able to do anything like that." She raised the lens again and squinted, trying to see what was on fire. Down below, in their long kennels, the little dragons howled. Traditionally, upon waking from blissfully uneventful insensibility, you ask, "Where am I?" It's probably part of the racial consciousness or something. Vimes said it. Tradition allows a choice of second lines. A key point in the selection process is an audit to see that the body has all the bits it remembers having yesterday. Vimes checked. Then comes the tantalizing bit. Now that the snowball of consciousness is starting to roll, is it going to find that it's waking up inside a body lying in a gutter with something multiple? The noun doesn't matter after an adjective like multiple. Nothing good ever follows multiple. Or is it going to be a case of crisp sheets, a soothing hand, and a businesslike feature in white pulling open the curtains on a bright new day? Is it all over, with nothing worse to look forward to now than weak tea, nourishing gruel, short, strengthening walks in the garden, and possibly a brief platonic love affair with a ministering angel? Or was this all just a moment's blackout, and some looming bastard is now about to get down to real business with the thick end of a pickaxe helve? Are there, the consciousness wants to know, going to be grapes? At this point, some outside stimulus is helpful. "It's going to be all right" is favorite, whereas "did anyone get his number" is definitely a bad sign. Either, however, is better than "you two hold his hands behind his back." In fact, someone said, "You were nearly a goner there, Captain." The pain sensations, which had taken advantage of Vimes's unconscious state to bunk off for a metaphorical quick cigarette, rushed back. Vimes said, "Arg." Then he opened his eyes. There was a ceiling. This ruled out one particular range of unpleasant options, and was very welcome. His blurred vision also revealed Corporal Nobbs, which was less so. Corporal Nobbs proved nothing. You could be dead and see something like Corporal Nobbs. Ankh-Morpork did not have many hospitals. All the guilds maintained their own sanitariums, and there were a few public ones run by the odder religious organizations, like the Balancing Monks. But by and large, medical assistance was non-existent, and people had to die inefficiently, without the aid of doctors. It was generally thought that the existence of cures encouraged slackness, and was in any case probably against nature's way. Have I already said, "Where am I?" said Vimes faintly. Yes. Did I get an answer? Dunno where this place is, Captain. It belongs to some posh bint. She said to bring you up here. Even though Vimes's mind appeared to be full of pink treacle, he nevertheless grabbed two clues and wrestled them together. The combination of rich and up here meant something. So did the strange chemical smell in the room, which even overpowered Nobby's more everyday odors. We're not talking about Lady Ramkin, are we? He said cautiously.
You could be right. Great big biddy. Mad for dragons.
Nobby's rodent face broke into the most horribly knowing grin Vimes had ever seen.
You're in her bed,
he said. Vimes peered around him, feeling the first overtures of a vague panic. Because now that he could halfway focus, he could see a certain lack of bachelor sockness about the place. There was a faint hint of talcum powder.
Bit of a boudoir,
said Nobby with the air of a connoisseur. Hang on a minute, said Vimes. There was this dragon. It was right over us. The memory rose up and hit him like a zombie with a grudge.
You all right, Captain?
The talons outspread, wide as a man's reach. The boom and thump of the wings, bigger than sails. The stink of chemicals. The gods alone knew what sort. It had been so close he could see the tiny scales on its legs and the red gleam in its eyes. They were more than just reptile eyes. They were eyes you could drown in. And the breath. So hot that it wasn't like fire at all, but something almost solid. Not burning things, but smashing them apart. On the other hand, he was here, and alive. His left side felt as though it had been hit with an iron bar, but he was quite definitely alive. What happened? He said.
It was young Carrot, said Nobby. He grabbed you and the sergeant and jumped off the roof just before it got us.
My side hurts. It must have got me, said Vimes.
No, I reckon that was where you hit the privy roof,
said Nobby.
And then you rolled off and hit the water butt.
What about Colin? Is he hurt?
Not hurt. Not exactly hurt. He landed more sort of softly. Him being so heavy, he went through the roof. Talk about a short, sharp shower of...
And then what happened?
Well, we sort of made you comfy, and then everyone went blundering about and shouting for the sergeant. Until they found out where he was, of course. And then they just stood where they were and shouted. And then this woman came running up yelling,
said Nobby. This is Lady Ramkin you're referring to, said Vimes coldly. His ribs were aching really magnificently now.
Yeah, big fat party, said Nobby unmoved. Cor, she can't half boss people about. Oh, the partier man, you must bring him up to my house this instant. So we did. Best place, too. Everyone's running around down in the city like chickens with their heads cut off.
How much damage did it do?
Well, after you were out of it, the wizards hit it with fireballs. It didn't like that at all. Just seemed to make it stronger and angrier. Took out the university's entire Widdershins wing.
And?
That's about it, really. It flamed a few more things, and then it must have flown away in all the smoke.
No one saw where it went?
If they did, they ain't saying.
Nobby sat back and leered.
Disgusting, really. Her living in a room like this. She's got pots of money, Sarge says. She got no call living in ordinary rooms. What's the good of not wanting to be poor if the rich are allowed to go around living in ordinary rooms? Should be marble.
He sniffed.
Anyway, she said I was to fetch her when you woke up. She's feeding her dragons now. Odd little buggers, aren't they? It's amazing she's allowed to keep them. What do you mean? You know, tarred with the same brush and that.
When Nobby had shambled out, Vimes took another look around the room. It did, indeed, lack the gold leaf and marble that Nobby felt was compulsory for people of a high station in life. All the furniture was old, and the pictures on the wall, though doubtless valuable, looked the sort of pictures that are hung on bedroom walls because people can't think of anywhere else to put them. There were also a few amateurish watercolors of dragons. All in all, it had the look about it of a room that is only ever occupied by one person, and has been absent-mindedly molded around them for over the years, like a suit of clothes with a ceiling. My print just finished. So, that sound's probably vanished now. Oh hey, it's Robot Kyo. Bat signal or dragon signal, say the Sharkies. Dragon Man. Or maybe just a dragon. Farmo says, but he was still, and the Sharkies say, Trogdor! Burninating the city, burninating all the showy coaches. Sharkies say, heh heh heh, water butt, says Mia, who is also trying to do homework. Farmo says, nice one, Mia. Oh boy. It was clearly the room of a woman, but one who had cheerfully and without any silly moping been getting on with her life while all that soppy romance stuff had been happening to other people somewhere else, and been jolly grateful that she had her health. Such clothing as was visible had been chosen for sensible, hard-wearing qualities, possibly by a previous generation by the look of it, rather than its use as light artillery in the war between the sexes. There were bottles and jars neatly arranged on the dressing table, but a certain severity of line suggested that their labels would say things like rub on nightly, rather than just a dab behind the ears. You could imagine that the occupant of this room had slept in it all her life, and had been called my little girl by her father until she was 40. There was a big, sensible blue dressing gown hanging behind the door. Vimes knew, without even looking, that it would have a rabbit on the pocket. In short, it was the room of a woman who never expected that a man would ever see the inside of it. The bedside table was piled high with papers. Feeling guilty, but doing it anyway, Vimes squinted at them. Dragons was the theme. There were letters from the Cavern Club Exhibitions Committee and the Friendly Flamethrowers League. There were pamphlets and appeals from the Sunshine Sanctuary for Sick Dragons. Poor little Vinny's fires were nearly damped after 5 years. Cruel use as a paint stripper, but now... Oh, sorry. Poor little Vinny's fires were nearly damped after 5 years' cruel use as a paint stripper, but now. One sentence, there was a weird apostrophe in there. And there were requests for donations and talks and things that added up to a heart big enough for the whole world, or at least the part of it that had wings and breathed fire. If you let your mind dwell on rooms like this, you could end up being oddly sad and full of a strange, diffuse compassion, which would lead you to believe that it might be a good idea to wipe out the whole human race and start again with amoebas. Beside the drift of paperwork was a book. Vimes twisted painfully and looked at the spine. It said, Diseases of the Dragon, by Sybil Deirdre Olgivanna Ramkin. He turned the stiff pages in horrified fascination. They opened into another world, a world of quite stupefying problems. Slab throat, the black tups, dry lung, storge, staggers, heaves, weeps, stones. It was amazing, he decided after reading a few pages, that a swamp dragon ever survived to see a second sunrise. Even walking across a room must be reckoned a biological triumph. The painstakingly drawn illustrations he looked away from hurriedly. He could only take so much innards. There was a knock at the door.
"I say, are you decent?"
Lady Ramkin boomed cheerfully.
I've brought you something jolly nourishing."
Somehow Vimes imagined it would be soup. Instead, it was a plate stacked high with bacon, fried potatoes, and eggs. He could hear his arteries panic just by looking at it.
"I've made bread pudding, too,"
said Lady Ramkin, slightly sheepishly.
"I don't normally cook much, just for myself. You know how it is, catering for one."
Vimes thought about the meals at his lodgings. Somehow the meat was always gray, with mysterious tubes in it. He began, not used to addressing ladies from a recumbent position in their own beds. "Corporal Nobbs tells me—"
"And what a colourful little man Nobby is," said Lady Ramkin.
Vimes wasn't sure he could cope with this. "Colourful?" he said weakly.
"A real character. We've been getting along famously."
"You have?"
"Oh, yes. What a great fund of anecdotes he has."
"Oh, yes. He's got that all right." It always amazed Vimes how Nobby got along with practically everyone. It must, he'd decided, have something to do with the common denominator. In the entire world of mathematics, there could be no denominator as common as Nobby. He said, and then found he couldn't leave this strange new byway. "You don't find his language a bit, ripe?"
"Salty," corrected Lady Ramkin cheerfully. "You should have heard my father when he was annoyed. Anyway, we found we've got a lot in common. It's an amazing coincidence, but my grandfather once had his grandfather whipped for malicious lingering."
That must make them practically family, Vimes thought. Another stab of pain from his stricken side made him wince.
"You've got some very bad bruising, and probably a cracked rib or two," she said. "If you roll over, I'll put some more of this on."
Lady Ramkin flourished a jar of yellow ointment. Panic crossed Vimes's face. Instinctively, he raised the sheets up around his neck.
"Don't play silly buggers, man," she said. "I shan't see anything I haven't seen before. One backside is pretty much like another. It's just that the ones I see generally have tails on. Now, roll over and up with the nightshirt. It belonged to my grandfather, you know."
There was no resisting that tone of voice. Vimes thought about demanding that Nobby be brought in as a chaperone, and then decided that would be even worse. The cream burned like ice.
"What is it?" "All kinds of stuff. It'll reduce the bruising and promote the growth of healthy scale." "What?" Sorry, probably not scale. Don't look so worried. I'm almost positive about that. Okay, all done."
She gave him a slap on the rump. "Madam, I am captain of the night watch," said Vimes, knowing it was a bloody daft thing to say even as he said it.
"Half naked in a lady's bed, too," said Lady Ramkin, unmoved. "Now, sit up and eat your tea. We've got to get you good and strong."
Vimes's eyes filled with panic.
"Why?" he said.
Lady Ramkin reached into the pocket of her grubby jacket.
"I made some notes last night," she said, "about the dragon."
"Oh, the dragon." Vimes relaxed a bit. Right now, the dragon seemed a much safer prospect.
"And I did a bit of working out, too. I'll tell you this, it's a very odd beast. It shouldn't be able to get airborne."
"You're right there."
"If it's built like swamp dragons, it should weigh about 20 tons. 20 tons! It's impossible. It's all down to weight and wingspan ratios, you see."
"I saw it drop off the tower like a swallow."
"I know. It should have torn its wings off and left a bloody great hole in the ground," said Lady Ramkin firmly. "You can't muck about. with aerodynamics. You can't just scale up from small to big and leave it at that, you see. It's all a matter of muscle power and lifting surfaces." "I knew there was something wrong," said Vimes, brightening up. "And the flame, too. Nothing goes around with that kind of heat inside it. How do swamp dragons manage it?" "Oh, that's just chemicals," said Lady Ramkin dismissively. "They just distill something flammable from whatever they've eaten and ignite the flame just as it comes out of the ducts. They never actually have fire inside them, unless they get a case of blowback." "What happens then?" "You're scraping dragon off the scenery," said Lady Ramkin cheerfully. "I'm afraid they're not very well designed creatures, dragons." Vimes listened. They would never have survived at all except that their home swamps were isolated and short of predators. Not that a dragon made good eating, anyway. Once you'd taken away the leathery skin and the enormous flight muscles, what was left must have been like biting into a badly run chemical factory. No wonder dragons were always ill. They relied on permanent stomach trouble for supplies of fuel. Most of their brain power was taken up with controlling the complexities of their digestion, which could distill flame-producing fuels from the most unlikely ingredients. They could even rearrange their internal plumbing overnight to deal with difficult processes. They lived on a chemical knife edge the whole time. One misplaced hiccup, and they were geography. And when it came to choosing nesting sites, the females had all the common sense and mothering instinct of a brick. Vimes wondered why people had been so worried about dragons in the olden days. If there was one in a cave near you, all you had to do was wait until it self-ignited, blew itself up, or died of acute indigestion. "You've really studied them, haven't you?" he said. "Someone ought to." "But what about the big ones?" "Golly, yes. They're a great mystery, you know," she said, her expression becoming extremely serious. "Yes, you said." "There are legends, you know. It seems as though one species of dragon started to get bigger and bigger, and then just vanished." "Died out, you mean?" "No, they turned up sometimes, from somewhere, full of vim and vigor, and then one day they stopped coming at all." She gave Vimes a triumphant look. "I think they found somewhere else where they could really be." "Really be what?" "Dragons. Where they could really fulfill their potential. Some other dimension or something, where the gravity isn't so strong or something." "I thought, when I saw it," said Vimes, "I thought you can't have something that flies and has scales like that." They looked at each other. "We've got to find it in its lair," said Lady Ramkin. "No bloody flying newt sets fire to my city," said Vimes. "Just think of the contribution to dragon lore," said Lady Ramkin. "Listen, if anyone ever sets fire to this city, it's going to be me. It's an amazing opportunity. There's so many questions." "You're right there." A phrase of Carrot's crossed Vimes's mind. "It can help us with our inquiries," he said. "But in the morning," said Lady Ramkin firmly. Vimes's look of bitter determination faded. "I shall sleep downstairs in the kitchen," said Lady Ramkin cheerfully. "I usually have a camp bed made up down there when it's egg-laying time. Some of the females always need assistance. Don't you worry about me." "You're being very helpful," Vimes muttered. "I've sent Nobby down to the city to help the others set up your headquarters," said Lady Ramkin. Vimes had completely forgotten the watch-house. "It must have been badly damaged," he ventured. "Totally destroyed," said Lady Ramkin. "Just a patch of melted rock. So, I'm letting you have a place in Psuedopolis Yard." "Sorry?" "Oh, my father had property all over the city," she said. "Quite useless to me, really. So I told my agent to give Sergeant Colin the keys to the old house in Psuedopolis Yard. It'll do it good to be aired." "But that area... I mean, There's real cobbles on the streets. The rent alone, I mean, Lord Vetinari won't. Don't you worry about it, she said, giving him a friendly pat. Now, you really ought to get some sleep. Vimes lay in bed, his mind racing. Psuedopolis Yard was on the Ankh side of the river, in quite a high-rent district. The sight of Nobby or Sergeant Colin walking down the street in daylight would probably have the same effect on the area as the opening of a plague hospital. He dozed, gliding in and out of a sleep where giant dragons pursued him, waving jars of ointment, and awoke to the sound of a mob.
All right. It's 8:15 precisely. I think that's a good place to stop. Oh, hey, Lilyface here. Just as we're stopping. How are you doing? Oh boy, Lady Ramkin. Psuedopolis Yard. Another Sherlock Holmes sounding location. So, the watch has survived a dragon attack. Seems like they were targeted for some reason, I wonder. Lots of references, says Farmos. Yeah, I don't know how many of them I caught before. I don't know how many I caught this time, to be honest. Oh boy. Well, I need to get something to eat. I had a meal before this that we ordered, but very shortly into it, I found what appeared to be a staple. So I didn't actually end up eating much of that, and, you know, my stomach's been kind of sore since then because I've been sitting here going, oh, what if I ate another staple? And I think I'm just upsetting myself. Robot Kyo makes me wonder if the book hits differently for English folk. Yeah, the cultural side of thing, there's definitely always little references, especially in Sir Terry's writing, that kind of makes me pause and go, I don't think I understand this bit here and there. Picked up my glass and the coaster came with it. Oh boy. The Mystery of the Dragon. Well, it's Robot Kyo's birthday tomorrow, everybody. Wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Robot Kyo. Spoilers. Everybody's saying happy birthday. Farmo says happy birthday, Rowboat. You gotta let me know. Send me a message if you're doing anything. Or if you want to do anything. Robot Kyo is one of the players in the game that we're going to be starting soon. We're doing a little session 0 type thing on Sunday to sort of finalize characters and set up the beginning of the game, and then we'll be doing our first session on Halloween. Robot Kyo says, thanks for the birthday wishes. Alright. Well, I will be back here, same sleep time, same sleep channel, this Friday, 7 p.m. I'm all blurry. Oh boy. So please join me as we investigate what's going on with this, why is there a mob that Vimes is hearing, and what's going on with the dragon, and what might Psuedopolis Yard be like? Does anybody have a suggestion for a channel I could raid out to? I am reminded by Lily's presence. It's a tricky thing. I don't really follow anyone on Twitch, so I'm not great at the etiquette side of things. Robot Q doesn't have anyone. Yep, I've gone blurry. Oh dear. It's not a big deal. We're just about done here anyways. Well, if nobody's got any suggestions, I think I'll just end the stream rather than pick someone at random. So, I hope everybody has a good evening and a nice Thursday. Robot Q, hope you have a good birthday. I'll probably talk to you about tomorrow as well, but hopefully we'll see you back here on Friday. Don't ask me why I'm wiggling my eyebrows like this. I just am, okay? Good night, everybody. Boo.